Welcome. My name is Dennis DeLoach, and I'm the host of the Uncle Jim Effect podcast. Welcome to episode number 23. The title of this episode is Courage is a State of Mind. Before we get started, I want to say, as I always do, thank you so much. We're approaching 13,000 subscribers, I believe close to 300,000 downloads, and that's growing by the day, and I can't thank you enough. We are now on Apple Podcasts. We're on Spotify. Please go there and check them out and subscribe to those. And subscribe to this YouTube channel. Leave a comment, like it. Please share it with your family and friends. And again, the purpose of our podcast is to create opportunities for over 1 million people to realize their God-given potential, and then to, more importantly, magnify it in the service of family, friends, neighbors. And as we do that, we can create a tsunami of hope in our areas, families, and throughout the world. And we know that that's an absolute massive 10x goal, but we are on our way. And with your help, we can do it together. So let's get started. Courage is a state of mind. Courage is something that we have all had at times. And the antagonist to courage is fear. And I don't know about you, but I can absolutely declare with all the arrogance in the world, I'm a master of fear, because there have been so many things in my life that I've had fear of, and it's kept me away from things or goals. But I think I've overcome a lot of those, and I know you have as well. So let's talk about that. And how do we make courage in our own life become the state of mind that we go to instead of fear? There's some quotes here that I want to read, and I want to start off with this one. It says, and this is Nelson Mandela, who I think is probably one of the most courageous men that's ever lived. And if you don't know his story, it's well worth looking into. He says, I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. So I love that, because it's a given in most, if not all, areas of our lives. We are going to have fear. That's our natural go-to reaction to most things. I can safely say that. But that doesn't mean that we're not the brave man. And we look at people that are so brave in any area you want to pick. And I've had some pretty brave, courageous people on my podcast that we're going to discuss a little later. But they choose to overcome their fear, and we look at them as courageous. But I guarantee you they have some of the exact same fears we've had, because I've talked to them, and they're great friends. And I've spent hours and hours and hours in deep personal discussion and talk with them, and know that that's true. So the definition of courage, and I always like starting with the definition, because what we think a word means and what it actually means could be two different things. So let's start on the same page. The definition of courage is the ability to do something that frightens you. The ability to do something that frightens you. And I want to change that word, the ability, to equal mindset. So the mindset to do something that frightens you. So the definition of courage is the ability to do something that frightens you. Let's talk about that ability and making it a mindset. So it's the go-to ability we have. Anytime something comes up, we don't just think, well, I can't do that. Our mindset shift's going to become, I now have the mindset that I can do that. I just have to overcome it. So we're going to talk about a lot of different things on courage. And I want to make sure that we start and go over a lot of these areas. But first, we're going to talk about that state of mind. How do we get in that state of mind to where courage is what we think of and we overcome fear? I think to say that I just am not going to have fear anymore is just putting your head in the sand. We're absolutely going to have fear. How do we overcome that fear? So one of the things I want to talk about in the state of mind, there's several things we want to talk about here, is the state of mind we have is to face fear. We basically acknowledge we have it, and then we have to figure out a way to overcome it. And we'll talk about that. if we change our state of mind, we will absolutely overcome fear. We'll absolutely then pursue goals that we have in our life that we've had the fear and backed off of and never did. And that's what we're talking all this time about, a 10x goal. Those, what do we say it should do? It should scare you to death. Well, that's fear. And I mean that in a way that if the goal doesn't scare you by the thought process of, wow, I've never even come close to that. I can't. I don't have the money. I don't have the time. I don't have the talent. Whatever the excuse is, we're on the right track. That's fear. We're going to have our mindset change so that we can overcome that. A state of mind will allow us to take risks, because now, instead of fear ruling us, our mindset's going to be, okay, how do I overcome that? I'm going to take risks, because when you have a fear, you back off. When you have courage, you step into it. It allows us to make difficult decisions. I mean, it's easy to say, I'm not doing that. I can't do it. I'm afraid. I don't have the talent, the energy, the money, whatever. That's easy. It make we are much better at making difficult decisions when we have courage, because we just say, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I have the courage to do it, and we'll figure it out along the way. It allows you to persevere through challenges. I mean, that goes without saying. It's easy to say no to a fear, but then as you face fears, and we'll talk about some of those that I have overcome, it scares the what out of you. And so it absolutely allows you to persevere through challenges. It allows you to face adversity. Instead of shying away from fear and adversity, we step into it, and it allows us to do it. Then it allows you to develop resilience, grit, and a growth mindset. We've talked a lot about that. But if we face fear a lot, but our choice is to always back off, that's not growth, that's retraction, right? So to have a growth mindset, we want to step into things. How do I overcome that? How do I change my mindset? How do I have the courage to attack it? As I do, I begin to grow. So that's how do we change our mindset? Those are some of the things that will develop and improve as we change our mindset. And remember, mindset, or the ability to do something that frightens us, is what courage is. And so once we get in our mind the ability to overcome those things, that's how we will master that. Courage does a bunch of things for us as well. It dramatically improves self-confidence and self-esteem. That goes without saying, that as you do things that you had a fear of, you realize that once you look fear in the face, it's not that scary. And then you just chuck that away. It's like climbing up a step. Once you climb that step, it's like, okay, I'm here. That's no big deal. Then I climb another step. And each step you climb in life, overcoming a fear, just gives you that much more self-confidence, and then self-esteem, knowing I've overcome that fear. Why would this next fear bother me? And so those are things that are important. It improves our performance. Obviously, as we say yes and step into opportunities and fail, but continue to get back up, we are absolutely going to improve our performance. If we keep saying no and sit home and lock ourselves in the closet, nothing gets better. And this is the key to opening a 10x lifestyle, is to face fear, overcome it, repeat. Face the fear, overcome it with courage, repeat. And as we do that, stair step, stair step, stair step, next thing we know, we've climbed the mountain. The key to a 10x life or a 10x goal is to know fear's coming. How are we going to deal with it? We're going to deal with it courageously by all those things we talked about. And then one of the tremendous side effects of this is, as you show and demonstrate courage, you become a leader and inspire others. And lots of people are watching, whether you know it or not. And you don't have to say, look, watch me, I'm overcoming fear. People see that. And once they see that, in their mind, they think, well, Dennis overcame that fear. I knew he couldn't do this or was worried about that. I know his limitations. Wow, I can face this part of my life. And then finally, I want to talk about some examples of courage. I've had a couple of them on the show. Like I said, Chad Hymas, my friend who's in a wheelchair, who set the world record for pushing a wheelchair, it's a manual wheelchair, and he's only got 5-10% use of his hands and nothing in his body. and he pushed that thing over 530 miles in the summer from Salt Lake City to Las Vegas. And I know that at times on the road, the temperature was well over 120 degrees. 530 some odd miles, a man with not much use of his body pushed his wheelchair up and down the hills in the Las Vegas. If that's not overcoming fear, I mean, all of us agree that faced with that opportunity, we would have all said, "Oh, of course, he's got a great reason to not do that." And yet we would have limited him. But his 10x dream, had he said, "I want to do this 530-mile push," would we have looked at that and said, "There's no way you can do that. That's a 10x goal, and you can't do that." Well, he did it. Use that example in your life when you say to yourself, "Oh, that's a 10x goal. That's a Chad Hymas 530-mile push my wheelchair event in my life. I just need to make that happen." Another example is Tom Shea, my friend who's a Navy SEAL. Uh, those guys, he's the one that's been my biggest mentor in the area of fear. And those guys absolutely are masters at overcoming fear. And he's the one that taught me basically when you have a fear, the way to overcome a fear is to stare it down, look at it, go into it. In my example of that was I'm basically physically terrified of heights. I can't get near a height. I watch something that's tall on TV and my heart starts racing. And so and I've shared this story with you, as I was overcoming a health issue and losing a ton of weight and getting back in shape. He challenged me, and not only in the area of doing something physically that was way outside of my comfort zone, which was a 10x goal, which is do one of the hardest trail races in America. It was about 14 miles up in the mountains over all this terrain. It was on the edge of cliffs, some of them 300-400 feet, literally within a foot or two on what's called slick rock, within a foot or two of a 300 or 400 foot cliff. So when you think of slick rock and you're on it, and slick means slide, and you're terrified of heights, that's facing fear right in the middle of it. And I absolutely was relentless on that and was very courageous. And it led to all these things I'm talking about for me in that area of my life. And so that's a tremendous example for me. One of the best examples in my life for courage is my wife, Camille. She's done so many things I could talk about. The one I'm going to talk about today is she did an Ironman, which is a 2 point, I believe it's a 2.8 mile swim. Then you jump on a bicycle and ride 112 miles. And then when you're done with that, you go run a marathon, which is 26.2 miles. And she did that basically kind of on her own with our son-in-law. But I mean, it wasn't a sanctioned event. She just wanted to do it and did the race. I mean, did the swim and then got into the bike race. And it was out on a lonely asphalt road to Nevada in the summer. And it was about 115 or 20 on that asphalt. And right when she got into that bike race, had a terrible accident, punctured her palm, knocked the wind out of her, severely bleeding, lacerated the palm of her hand, and it was horrible. And so I went up and picked her up and basically said, "Okay, you're done. Let's get you to the hospital." And she said, "Give me a minute." And next thing we knew, she said, "I'm good to go." About 2 minutes later, and she was on the bike and ended up finishing the Ironman. And so not only setting the goal, but when you have a wipeout like that, that's the easiest excuse in the world. It's like, "Well, I trained and at least I did it. I started. It's not my fault I fell." No, she basically looked feared and said, "Yeah, it's pain and it's bloody and now I'm hurting." Add that to the list of even if you're in your best shape or your best day of what that will do to you. And she overcame that and faced fear, stepped into it. And now look, I'm talking about this years later. And so these are some examples that have been inspirational to me. I know as we're talking about this, you're thinking of people in your own life that you've got examples of That's what courage will do. It's okay to have fear. In fact, it's absolutely normal that you have fear. What's not normal is to look at fear, back off, and turn your back and run and hide. What's I should say that is normal, but that's not what we want to do. What's not normal and what we want to do is when you have that fear, for example, like me, when I'm terrified of heights, how do you face that? You step on a cliff that's on slick rock. Now, don't do something stupid and fall, but that's what you do is you step into that fear. And once you realize it, the next thing you know, you're like, okay, that I thought it was a 12-foot boogeyman, and it wasn't. It was only 2 feet. That's how you overcome fear, by showing courage. Once you do that once in one area, you learn the process. This ability becomes a mindset. Once you have that mindset to overcome fear, you develop courage. It leads you to each and everything we talk about: overcoming fears, pursuing goals, taking risks, making difficult decisions, persevering through challenges, facing adversity, developing resilience, grit, and a growth mindset. Once we do that, it dramatically improves our performance and our self-confidence and our self-esteem. All of those things that we do improve performance. And most importantly, it opens the door to a 10x lifestyle or goal that we want to do. As we set a 10x goal, it scares the heck out of us. That's fear. How do we step into that goal? We step into and face it. What is it I'm truly afraid of? Again, I don't look at the big picture climbing Mount Everest. I look at, can I take one step? Yes. Then can I take another step? Absolutely. And then that's just step after step after step. Eventually, you get to the top of the mountain. And that's the process of courage. Winston Churchill said, fear is a reaction. Courage is a decision. That's what I hope you got from this. That when we have fear, that's a reaction. That's a normal reaction to what our brain, the natural man, says that we should do. You see a cliff, you should be afraid. Courage is a decision. The decision is, I see the cliff. I know my heart's racing. I'm not going to die. I'm going to step into it and I'm going to start walking. Fear is a reaction. Courage is a decision, is what Winston Churchill said. And I love that. Apply that in your life. And remember that the ability, or in this case, the mindset we now have, the mindset to do something that frightens you, is the definition of courage. And now in life, we're going to take this one step at a time and do that. Walt Disney, who unfortunately, in my opinion, I think Disney, if you looked at who Walt Disney was when I was a child, he represented all the good things in life. And I think, unfortunately, in a political narrative, the Disney Corp has gone way down the wrong road. But this is the original Walt Disney, who I believe was a great man who had a great attitude and outlook on life. And he said this: all our dreams can come true if we have the courage to pursue them. That ties in with the 10x lifestyle. Whatever it is you want in life, irregardless of whether you can get it or not, if we were to tell you, just pick, if there was no obstacle, what would your dream 10x goal or life look like? Have the guts to write that down, and don't say, well, I want that. Oh, I can't do that. I can't do that. Forget about all of that. Just write down, in a perfect world, what does that look like? And then step back and realistically say, okay, why can't I get that? Oh, I don't have this. I don't have that. That's the fear coming out, and that's absolutely normal. But what do you do to fear? You step into it. And when you step into that 12-foot boogeyman, you realize he's not that big. And so to get a 10x life, we need to have a mindset that realizes fear is coming. That's okay. The courage is a decision, and we step into that and realize, okay, once I'm in, it's not as bad as I thought. Thank you so much. You guys have given me the courage to overcome the fear I had with this. And there's so many tremendous blessings on the other side of fear. Once you face fear, it goes from being the worst thing in life to opening doors you never thought existed. And a lot of times there's a saying, and I'm going to butcher it, but something to the effect of, once you get past your limit to where you thought was the end of life, on the other side of that is where you get to know yourself. And by that, we mean, for example, I basically had spiritual experiences on that race for me as I passed what I absolutely knew I couldn't do. And as I did them, it was a spiritual experience for me, literally an emotional experience, where I realized at that point, I didn't know this part of me existed. And I could never see that part of me until I stepped into the darkness, until I faced my fear, until I developed courage. You absolutely can do this. It's not a big deal. It's literally saying, yes, I have a fear, whatever that fear is. Basically, step into it. Step into it by saying, I understand it's there. And whatever that is, it's real, but I'm going to step into it and I'm going to overcome it like everybody else. Congratulations. Please go to Apple Podcasts and Spotify and subscribe. Hit the like button below, subscribe here. And most importantly, have the courage to get a 10x goal and a 10x life. And don't just sit and listen. Get up and get busy getting after it. Face your fears, develop courage. It's basically a mindset, and you got this. Thank you, and we will talk soon. Bye-bye.